And good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kim Gordon, and I am the president of the board of American Equity and Justice Group. I am not Senator Moncadingra. Let's just get that out there. We had anticipated that Senator Dinger would be here to do the welcome and to share with you her excitement about the work that we are doing and our dashboard. It is our hope that she's still going to be able to join us today, but we'd like to begin with our program. So we are going to start off with King County Superior Court Judge David Keenan.
It's always interesting to be, Kim asked me if she could show me where the microphone is, and I can't tell you how many times Dean Clark knows I've spoken in this room. I know where the microphone is. I actually took the LSAT in this room, the Law School Admissions exam. There was a fire in the ceiling during the exam. Probably would have gotten to Yale, but for that. Seattle University School of Law is the Yale of Central Seattle. I like to say. I actually did so many things in this room. I was called up to the board to solve a property law problem and turned completely red. It was an awful property problem, and you know anything about property. And if you do, I'm sorry, but I so much trauma in this room. I did meet my best friend, right where you're sitting, actually, in this room. I'm now godfather and his daughter, and I met my life partner in this room. I sat over there, and she sat over there, and it only took us 15 years to start dating. So good things and some rough things that have to be in this room. I actually was not signed up to speak, as Kim knows, today. But I signed up just to be an attendee, but Kim asked me if I would say a few words. So I'm Dave Keenan. I serve on our Access to Justice Board, the State Supreme Court's Access to Justice Board. I work in the Washington State Superior Court as a judge here in King County. I'm not here as a judge. I'm not here. I feel like I have to explain that I'm not here to promote anything other than hopefully justice, and hopefully I can promote justice. I'm really just here as someone who's interested in the technology and the potential. And I first connected with Kim about this tool, I think, in the fall of 2020, when I was working on a chapter for the Washington State Gender and Justice Commission study. It's called 2021, How Gender and Race Affect Justice Now. And as I recall, Kim had reached out to, I think, Justice Gordon McLeod, and then Judge Glasgow, Becca Glasgow from Division 2, had mentioned this tool, and the administrative office of the court swooped me in and connected me with the team, and I'm so glad that they did. Because what I was writing about at the time, it's a chapter in the study now, was legal financial obligations. And those are our court fines, fees, costs, and court-ordered restitution that we often impose on the courts on people who cannot afford to pay. And what I was struggling with, something we still struggle with, was getting good data. We have a non-unified court system, 39 counties, countless municipalities. I wanted to know, could this tool gather that data? And my understanding is that they're working on that. I have requested that for what it's worth. But I use this example because it is something that I know about. It's how I learned about this tool, but also because I think for me it illustrates why something like this is useful, because it's 2022. And yet often when I am relaying what I see in terms of disparities in our criminal, civil, and foster care legal systems, when we talk about bail, when we talk about charging decisions, when we talk about sentencing, I can tell you that what my instinct is based on experience, but I can't necessarily quickly back that up with data. And I've talked in different forums about having one guilty plea calendar after another, one sentencing calendar after another, where everyone or almost everyone is a person of color. just as an example. And I can give you a very rough estimate of how many fines and fees and costs and restitution that I've imposed on people who will not be able to pay. But I cannot be exact. I cannot tell you if there are trends. I cannot tell you if I or my colleagues have exhibited biases that we are aware of, biases that we are not aware of, that might jump out from the data we really looked at. If we looked at the data, would it tell us that there is interpersonal racism, institutional racism, structural racism? I suspect that it would. I think it has. That are undermining the integrity of our decisions and the collective work of the criminal, civil, and foster care legal systems. And those systems don't automatically crank out justice. And I have a feeling if we were able to get better data, that maybe they do a little bit better. I'd like to know the answers to those questions and others, because I hear the question a lot. Where's the data? My complaint about something is, well, show me the data. And that can be frustrating, because I think about that refrain, and sometimes we get stuck because we don't invest in collecting the data, and then we fall back on the lack of data when talking about whether to make changes. Well, if we have better information, maybe we can work on that change for you. Well, if we invested in getting that better information, then maybe we can get to the change that we're talking about to advance access to justice. And then relatedly, while data can help us do better, it can also help us ask for help. And so, for example, I testified several times in this last legislative session and last year as well in support of a bill around legal financial obligations on behalf of the Superior Court, Judges Association, and the Minority and Justice Commission. Thank you, by the way. I don't think Senator Hager is here yet, but the senator did support that legislation. And that bill deals with a lot of money. And as you can imagine, it's important when we're talking about money which might burden a defendant or might benefit a crime victim. Knowing those figures as much as we can overall about our work in these systems can help us work for increased access to justice, something which the Code of Judicial Conduct that I must abide by tells us that judges should be doing. So while I don't promote particular tools, having seen this tool going back to more than a year in my work with the Administrative Office of the Courts and the Gender and Justice Commission, I'm really grateful to the team. And I look forward to hearing more about this particular piece, this data piece. But also remembering, and I think this is important, I would just ask us all to keep this in mind as the program goes on, that data is not the end all be all. It's not a panacea. We should be listening to the voices of impacted communities in our criminal, civil, and foster care legal system, and keep in mind that their stories are not always evident in that data. And I think that's a piece that we shouldn't forget when we're talking about this tonight. So I'm going to turn it back over to Kim. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Judge Keenan. There are three things that I want to highlight that you said that are music to my ears. One is that you, as someone who is an important decision maker in our criminal legal system, you have questions, and that you are looking to data to help you figure out answers to those questions. That's one thing. Another that I was excited to hear you say is that data is not the end point. And at American Equity and Justice Group, we agree, but it is a very important starting point. The third thing that I heard you say that helps me introduce our next speaker is that what is also important is the lives, the people that are involved. And one of the things that we have been mindful about as we at American Equity and Justice Group have started working with data is that each data point is a life and individual that has been impacted. And not just them, but their families, their communities, their societies. And so we're very aware of the fact and appreciative of the lived experiences that resulted in the data that we are able to include in our dashboard. An individual that is on our board is Abram Mustafa Carrington. And I'm going to have him tell you more about his own lived experience and how he came to work with us.
Can you hear me all right with this?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I'll try to stay out of that light. Yes, my name is Abram Mustafa Harrington. I am actually care manager / office manager / program manager at the Second Chance Center in Aurora, Colorado. It's a reentry organization, and our motto is that we try to help formerly incarcerated individuals live lives of success and fulfillment. That's very important because we say, you can't have success without the fulfillment part. No matter how well you start to do, you have to feel fulfilled to be able to move on with your life. The person who actually started this organization is a good friend of mine. We're actually very close, look at him more as a brother, and it's Hassan Abdulatif. He did a great deal of time in prison himself. As a matter of fact, you pretty much can't walk no more than 10 feet at any given time in our building without coming across somebody who's done 34 years, 20 years, 15 years, 16 years, what have you. And so when it comes to this equity dashboard, when I first heard about it, I almost cried. I was so happy and I was so moved that somebody actually was finally doing this kind of work and knowing how important it was. We talked about it a great deal. We talked with Anthony about it, and Hassan, myself, another brother named Tajuddin Al-Shahid, Khalil, Halim. We were talking about the importance of this dashboard. And it wasn't too long after that, I made contact with Anthony so we could talk a little bit more about it. And, he asked me to be on the board. I told him I was afraid I was going to mess it up. So I was afraid, he said, don't worry about it, come on board. And so I agreed and have been trying to do my best to see how I can contribute. This dashboard is extremely important. Just like Judge King just said, just like Kim was just saying, with regards to data doesn't tell you really everything. I think that's important, of course, for everybody to recognize, but it's data to me is kind of like when you look at an artist with his brushes and his tools. You really can't get a picture done without that. But once you have that, it's pretty much you use those tools and you can actually get a clear picture of what it is that you're trying to put together or trying to find and discover. And so, yeah, there you go. When it comes to this dashboard, and to me the significance of it, I started to think about a person in history that a lot of people probably haven't really heard of or not familiar with. The guy's name was Abbas ibn Firnas, and most people haven't even heard about Abbas ibn Firnas. Abbas ibn Firnas was from the 9th century AD, and approximately around the year 850, somewhere around there, he was actually the first person to fly. And I found that very shocking when I read up on that, because it's a young man like pretty much most everybody in here. Plus, I'm from the state of Ohio. I used to always be very proud to brag that it was the Wright brothers, that actually in Ohio were the first people to fly. But actually, Abbas ibn Firnas in 850, that was very shocking. He actually had put together this contraption, had buzzard feathers on it, and reportedly he flew a great distance before crashing to the ground. The reason why that's very significant to me because I would often think about how far we've come from the Wright brothers to now when it comes to flight. We've actually managed to go from these little rickety machines that none of us would have got on. Yeah, I got to give credit for the side they actually did on those darn things. To putting somebody on the moon and all these other things. You've got jets and fighter jets going speed of sound, Mach this, Mach that. In just over 100 years we have that. And I kept thinking about, wow, you know, if people would have listened to Abbas ibn Firnas back in 850, how far would we be? I mean, we might be like, I don't know, Star Trek, we'd be somewhere, another star or whatever. You know, there's 1,000 years, but think about how far we could have got. And I identify with Abbas ibn Firnas because, you know, I'm an inventor. I actually have 2 patents pending. One of them is for an antimicrobial treatment system that proposes to use electromagnetic fields to treat microbial infections as opposed to chemicals, you know, like antibiotics and things like that. I have a patent pending that I had to meet with my lawyers as soon as I get back to Denver about. That's for a renewable energy system, and this renewable energy system could make it where you don't even have to recharge an electrical vehicle. And I already have the prototype pretty much developed for that. I also have a patent that was issued for rapid deploy flood mitigation system to replace sandbags. And it's faster, easier to deploy than sandbags. It's stronger than sandbags. I have a patent for that. Started a company to try to make that available to the public to hopefully save lives. But the difference is, you know, between myself and Ibn Firnas, and the similarity between myself and Anthony is that I actually spent over 30 years languishing in prison for wrongful conviction. And it wasn't until December 20th, I can never forget it, 2019, that I was actually called to the warden's office, and they told me that I had to make a phone call. I was terrified. I thought somebody in my family had passed away. And when I got there and made a phone call, it was actually to the governor's office. And they proceeded to tell me that I would be going home in about 45 days. I've been granted a rare immediate clemency. And so in February 27th, my new birthday, 2020, I walked out of prison kind of like one of those animals on National Geographic, and I was pushing the cart and moving up this tower and just hoping that somebody doesn't shoot me. And it was remarkably easy. You know, I mean, that's what shocked me. It was just so easy for them to let me go. And I kept marveling at how I couldn't understand how this had happened years ago when there was every indication, you know, that there were problems, that there were things was wrong. But then again, this was the same county that gave you Black Klansmen. That's why I actually got locked up in that same county, in Colorado. And so I guess it should have been any surprise. But when I look at that and I said, okay, well, if you would have had something, you know, that could have pointed to, you know, some of the inconsistencies in the way that this county was actually handling a lot of the business that they were handling, with a lot of the other problems that you actually have with the system, some type of data tool that could have showed you that there's something unusual going here, that things probably would have been remarkably different. It was something that could have been safeguarded against. It was a hard lesson for me to learn over 30 years, just being like a fly on the wall, so to speak, you know, and looking just how often or not we see that there's something wrong. Like Judge Keenan was saying, I really applaud you being here and actually, you know, saying that. You see that there's things wrong, you see there's irregularities going on, but there's really nothing being done about it. And there's no real, I guess you might say, in legal products, there's no evidence that it's clear says that it's not really right. And I used to observe that over the years and say, wow, I wish somebody would come up with something that would show you that there is a problem. Because when I was initially arrested, I was actually told by an independent investigator, he said, you're a Black man, you're charged with killing a white man in El Paso County. It doesn't matter if you're innocent or guilty, and I couldn't believe that. You know, I was fresh out the Air Force, I was a veteran, I was like, this is not Mississippi from 1950 something, this is, you know, I thought it was different, but it turned out that wasn't the case, and I used to always wish over the years that you had something that can actually highlight that. And so it is that, like I said, a lot of the guys who are in the building, like I said, likewise, have done a great deal of time and are right now working very, very hard to make a difference in the world when it comes to reentry, to trying to help people get back on track with their lives and become very productive citizens. And so that's why when this launch was happening, I got a vacation, so to speak. They said, no, you know, Hassan himself told me, he said, this is important. He said, you have to go. And so I was like, okay. So, you know, I came, and then Jamie, our community outreach, you know, person who works with legislation and everything, she agreed to come as well. And so that is really why we're here. point out to everybody the fact that justice is something that you can't take for granted. A lot of times, we all do that on some level. We always say someone else will get that right, it get fixed somehow, some way. And all too often, that's not the case. And sometimes it has real life consequences at the expense of people's lives. We hear these stories all the time. We hear people all the time get down to prison for wrongful convictions and things of that nature and stuff like that. And you hear about the nightmare stories. I'm one of the nightmare stories. You know, I mean, I never would have thought in a million years I would be, but you know, I actually am. And there are others. You know, it's estimated that in any given time, again, this is an estimate, and this is why we need data tools to better prove some of these estimates, that at any given time, you might have 2.55% of people who are incarcerated who possibly be innocent. Those are real lives. I've met some people who unfortunately who still are incarcerated, I believe, truly be innocent. And so this is why this tool is so very important. The reason why I brought up Edward Bernays is because, like I said, I wanted to give you a comparison from 1,100 years ago when the Spanish first flew. If people would have paid attention and said, hey, maybe we can do something with this, where would we be from 1,100 years ago if we would start working on flight back then? And so, comparatively speaking, when you look at a tool like this, when it comes to justice, I mean, true justice. And don't listen to people when they talk about getting hard on crime. That's not justice. Justice is, like a friend once told me, incarcerated. He said, justice is getting what you deserve, no more, no less. And that is something that a lot of times it's hard to measure or hard to do, but that's the reason why you need data tools that can help you with everything from sentencing to making sure that things are equitable. Because again, it's something that has to be developed. It has to be cultured correctly. You have to develop a culture to have justice. And the simple fact is, and I believe this to be true as well, and I'll say this in closing, is that we could wait, 1,100 years, to learn how to fly, and we did do that. No society in history has ever survived or been able to wait that long when it comes to social justice. Just pick up a history book and read about how wars got started, how governments fell apart, how empires fell apart and were destroyed. A lot of times, social justice or lack thereof was one of the underlying factors. When people stop believing, when people stop having faith or confidence in the systems. And you can look at everything from, the trial of Socrates, when they refused to listen to what he was saying as far as the Greeks. And not long after that, they started to fall apart and crumble. And I'm pretty sure if you go back to ancient Egypt and you looked at some of the last dynasties, there was somebody who was sitting around saying, Pharaoh's really tripping. I don't think this is going to work out. And so this is why this is so important. And why I'm so glad to be here, and why I'm so thankful for all the work that the AEJG is doing. I'm very grateful for Anthony for putting this together, for Kim and Kate and everyone else, on the team. There's so many to name that actually is participating to try to make this a reality. And I told everybody from inmates in Colorado to a lot of people in office, to a lot of people involved in any number of different organizations and groups, that we're going to do our best to try to get this in Colorado, because we need it in Colorado, we need it in Kansas, we need it in the entire country. And hopefully this would be like flight, something that, where you have airplanes and airports all around the world, you can have this platform, every country where they're using it to make sure that they're doing things correctly. With that, thank you so much for listening. I want to introduce you to my good friend Anthony, who is the founder and executive director of the AEJG. And please, I beg you, take heed and support this. Thank you very much.
The criminal legal system is our legal system. Therefore, it should reflect our values. Unfortunately, as it stands right now, that is not the case. Data shows that there are vast disparities when it comes to race, age, gender, and socioeconomic status. The Equity Dashboard takes decades of information in the criminal legal system and puts it in one place and makes it transparent. What I like most about the dashboard is interactive. You'll see right now, like per the population, you're 5 times more likely to be arrested and convicted of a felony if you're Black. I read a stack of studies from colleges, government, and nonprofit organizations about disparities. Yeah, it made me wonder why big tech hasn't used modern technology to create a database to sort this data and actually overcome some of these disparities and help make for a fairer system. Nobody thought that it was possible. In 2020, I did a legal training for Microsoft. After this legal training, we had dozens of volunteers step forth to lend their talents to this cause. It changed my perspective of Microsoft. The heart and love they bring to it is just like, you know, they've gone above and beyond to make sure that this project is a success. One of the good things about this dashboard, it allows taxpayers to know how exactly their money is being spent. Policymakers can see it, judges can evaluate their own conduct. Over here, we have average sentence by race or judge. So this is where you can really hold judges accountable to see how they treat different races or genders or age. You know, I want to throw something in like, you know, it's hard for them to continue doing what they're doing when light is shone on something. It's easy when people ain't paying attention, but when the light is shone on something, they're more motivated to take action. We have done presentations around the country, from Harvard University to state Supreme Courts to nonprofit organizations. At the end of every presentation, everybody asks us, how can we get this dashboard in our state? But that's why we need your help. We have functioned in the beginning phases off volunteers. But as we build things out and as we make things available for other states, we're gonna need to scale this up. We also need feedback from the public. We need feedback from people in the legal system to see what it is that we can do to make it easier to do these searches. I know that this dashboard can empower people. So moving forward, I want more people to get involved with it, more people to utilize it, and for us to come together as a collective to bring about the changes that need to be made.
So being that I'm a little taller than everyone, I think, I know you right there and there, but I'm gonna go ahead and take the floor. Instead of having blue light in my eyes in dark, right? And I'd like to begin by, you see our mission. I'll just ask you to read the mission as I'm speaking, right, rather than each other go through it. Because what I first like to do is thank everybody for coming out today. You know, we've been isolated for the last couple of years, and I'm a big believer in getting together and doing things in public, doing things in person, and it brings more of a harmony when we do these things as much as possible, being safe. Thank you. Next slide. So we function in large part on volunteers. Now we've got some grants in the works. We, you know, we're working on the funding so we can actually pay people to do. But before I get started in my speech fully, I want to ask everybody who's a part of our volunteer team, everybody who's part of the board who's in the room. I know we got some out there. Anybody to stand up? You too big. And we actually have dozens more. So this is a small piece. But you know, with the team that we have, I really believe it's a good example of when you have a group working towards the same objectives in harmony, it shows you how quickly things can get done, and it shows you how effectively things can be. But when you have an adversarial system like much of our legal system is, it tears down everything that you're trying to build and work towards. So we need to find ways where we can come together and work in harmony towards common objectives. Everybody should want justice. We just need to identify how the justice look and how we work towards that justice. So we have a very talented team. I was gonna talk about the things that are up there, but we have data scientists, data analysts, front end, back end developers. Our marketing team, can't discount them, and statisticians. You know, because we want to know that the output of the data, we want to know the reliability of it. And we want to stand up to anybody who has any questions towards what we're doing, that all the stuff that we're doing is airtight, yet alone, most of our people are Microsoft, which is, it speaks for itself, right? So next slide. And this is our board, highly talented board. You can go to our website, you hear some of the backstory. I don't want to eat up too much time. But every last one of these people has an amazing background. Amazing background. Okay, so I'm pretty sure most people here know that I was incarcerated at a young age. I went to prison when I was 16 years old. Sometimes I would start off speeches because I would notice that when I would give tours of my walk, right? And I noticed that in the tour, people said, "Hey, how old were you when you got locked up?" And I said 16, but I said at the beginning of the speech, so I started just asking the question, do you remember where you were at when you were 16 years old? Because then it put people in that relatability mode, right? You made them wonder where they're at when they're 16 years old. No, I'm not talking about how young I was, that's not the point. The point is, one of the things that you do while you're in prison is you reflect on life. And you don't do it when you're walking amongst people, you do it late at night, you lay in bed. Now, I only had 16 years to cover. So I went all the way to a potty training and back and all the time, right? And then I started reflecting on what I learned that day. I started reflecting on my day. But while I was reflecting on life, one of the lessons that I learned when I was reflecting on life is something that happened when I was 14 years old. My mom ordered a stair climber. And when it got delivered, she wasn't at home, so I decided to put it together for her as a surprise. And when I first unpacked it, I was looking at like the display screen, stairs, I was impressed by these big pieces. And I put it together, and it took me about an hour, hour and a half. But when I got it together, I looked down and I was like, where are all these extra pieces coming from? Right? So I got up and I tested it out, and the stairs barely moved. So at the time, I was 14, I didn't want to take responsibility, I didn't want to be accountable. So I said, there must be something wrong with the stair climber. So my mom, being nice, she just, took it apart and sent it back to the company, right? That's take it apart and try to put it back together, so it did work. But what I learned in that example was a powerful lesson. It was a powerful lesson. Because not having those little pieces of little screws and washers, those little bolts, not having those little pieces in place made all the difference. And a lot of times people don't want to be a part of something unless they have a big role in that thing. When sometimes it's those little pieces, those little roles make all the difference. Now, when you have everything in place, when you have a system that works, when you have a system that's working together, that's when you can get the motion going. But if things are out of place, then you're never going to accomplish that. And this is one of the things that we hope to do with the equity dashboard, is to bring a system into place, bring a method into place that can be utilized by judges, that can be utilized by prosecutors, that can be utilized by defense attorneys, and can be utilized by the community to work towards what we really believe is justice. A lot of times we can talk to people in the community and people who have not been impacted by the criminal legal system, and they're shocked by what goes on in the criminal legal system. So to have something that's available to the public, that's transparent, and that everybody can use to actually start working together towards something, this is what our objectives are, and this is what we hope to accomplish. We know that everything, I know a lot of people like to say, nothing's gonna happen overnight. I think overnight is actually the perfect analogy. We know it's not gonna happen rapidly, but I don't believe when you hear people say it's gonna take years, why should it take years? If you have a proper system, then you can accomplish it a lot quicker, right? So what I was saying, and I'll say this in closing, I believe overnight is the perfect analogy. Because if you learn from nature, it goes from night to day in a gradual process. If somebody would turn out all these lights in the room, after 15 minutes, it'd be all just the dark, and then somebody turns on the lights, all of us are gonna be like this, right? Because you didn't have time to adjust. But with nature, you see it goes from the blackness of night, dark blue, blue light. A gradual process. So rather than think we're gonna come into the system and bash everybody and change everything that way, if we work towards a gradual process with indisputable data, indisputable methods, then we can actually work towards that fair system that we're all seeking. Thank you. Senator Zinger.
Good evening, everyone. How you guys doing? I am very excited to see this dashboard. Also, you know, I've seen it before multiple times. But I'm excited for all of you to see it. My name is Monica Dingra. I'm the state senator representing the 45th legislative district, which is the King County parts of the city of Woodinville, parts of the city of Redmond, Kirkland, Sammamish, and Duval. In the Senate, I am the deputy majority leader. I chair a law and justice committee. I sit on behavioral health and on ways and means. I really do want to thank our hosts for inviting me here today. It really is such a pleasure for me to be here to have this wonderful dashboard introduced to everyone. And it's nice to see so many familiar faces and others who I'm sure I'll get to know more. Now, I don't know if you guys noticed, Anthony kept saying criminal legal system. He didn't say criminal justice system. And normally when we talk about it, we do say the criminal justice system. And I'm not sure how many people, maybe not you guys in the room, but people outside, how many people spend time thinking about the word justice that's in the criminal justice system, right? Justice for whom? And as many of you know, or some who don't, I actually spent my career being a senior deputy prosecuting attorney with King County. I created and ran the first therapeutic alternative unit, so did a lot of work with criminal justice reform, crisis intervention training, alternatives to incarceration, trauma-informed care. And before then, I was a trial attorney. And when I would walk in and out of court, in the courthouse, the head of our criminal division, if I ever saw him, he would look at us and say, "Have you done justice today?" He would say, "Did you get a conviction?" He would say, "Did you do justice today?" And the reason I say that is because that wasn't code word for conviction. He actually meant that. And so it's really important to have that conversation about justice for whom. And I know that in that office we talked about justice for the victim, justice for the community, and also justice for the person who's charged with the crime, the defendant. And to me, that is what the criminal justice system is all about. It's acknowledging, understanding, and executing on an understanding of what justice is, and understanding that justice is inclusive. And I'll just say, using the phrase criminal justice system is aspirational, because we don't have justice. There's not a lot of justice happening for people of color, for survivors of sexual assault, domestic violence, just to name a few. But I do believe we can get there. And I remember when a host first approached me a few years ago with this idea and this plan, and they had a demo for me to take a look at. I immediately was just so excited. You know, I completely recognized right then and there how revolutionary and important this could be. To have transparency, to actually have data that is accessible to people who actually do the job, judges, prosecutors, defenders, advocates, have it available to the public. It really is going to change the way we take a look and see our criminal legal system. It is going to reveal a lot of areas that we may not be aware of, or that maybe we've heard about or thought that was true, but we're actually going to have data that is going to be right in our face. And, you know, after the Blake decision came out in the legislature, we were trying to figure out, how do we fund the resentencing that's going to happen? Do we have an idea of how many cases are going to be impacted? How many individuals are going to be impacted? And that's when a dashboard like this, which you'll get a demo of shortly, comes into place. It's not about just helping the practitioners, it's also helping the policymakers on really seeing what we can do with this data. So I'm very, very excited on what we can do. And I just think this is just the beginning. I already have ideas where I would love to see them expand, as I'm sure that everyone here will as well. And I think with such a talented, committed, and principled people behind this project and the dashboard, I have a lot of great hopes in making sure that we can actually have a criminal justice system. So thank you all for coming here. Thank you all for inviting me. And I am so excited about this work and can't wait for everyone to see the demonstration. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Senator Dingra. Before we get into a demonstration of the dashboard, I point out two other things. One is that, as Anthony pointed out, the incredible talent that we have here. Senator Deaver, as a former prosecutor, is excited about this tool. I have spent 25 years as a criminal defense lawyer, a public defender, and I am excited about this tool. We have formerly incarcerated individuals, and Kate Sigafus, who's going to help me with to demonstrate the dashboard. She is a former prosecutor who works at Microsoft. So what this also shows, it's not just the power of data, but the power of collaboration. So not only am I a criminal defense practitioner, but I serve on the Sentencing Guidelines Commission. And we are the government body that advises the legislature and the governor's office on criminal sentencing policy, felony policy. And we, in our discussions, we value data to help inform us and guide our decisions and our advice. But what we know is that even though there's very good data to be had in Washington, the data exists in many different places. In 39 different courts, in prosecutors' offices, defense, public defender offices, the Department of Corrections. And this data that exists, and we are the home of Microsoft and other tech giants. And yet in our criminal legal system, the data in one place does not talk to the data in another. There is no easy way until now to begin to, as an individual, as a legislator, as a lawyer, as a judge, as a community member, there has been no way until now to take the questions you have about what's happening in the criminal legal system and begin to get the data to explore answers. We talked about it at the Sentencing Guidelines Commission, and we would always end up with, well, it's too complicated and the data doesn't talk to each other and there's really no money. So it really took this collaboration between the public and the private sector, between people on all sides of the courtroom, between those with lived experiences and those who have power in the system to really make real what others could only wish for. Through this dashboard, we hope to, first starting with sentencing data, but later on with data from all parts of the life of a criminal case. We hope to make it possible for you as users to ask the questions that you have. We hope to make it possible for judges in one courtroom to understand how their decision in one case compares to a judge in the courtroom next door and a judge across the state. We hope to give them the basis, us all the basis, to understand how the decisions we make in an individual case aggregates and can create systemic disparities. Because it's only then that we, as the people who want to do good in all of our jobs in the criminal legal system, it is only then that we really can do the most good. So as we, right before we talk about the dashboard itself, you see that. I want to give the people that don't understand felony sentencing in Washington a quick primer. Decades ago, we recognized in Washington that our felony sentencing was disparate. And so our lawmakers created a new approach that they thought would make the system fairer. First, they gave every felony crime a seriousness level. Forging a bad check is a level 1. First-degree aggravated murder is a level 16. They also devised a formula that looks at an individual's past and current crimes and assigns that individual in that particular case an offender score. The seriousness level and the offender score each became the axis on what is called the sentencing grid. Here's an example. First-degree robbery is one of the crimes that has a seriousness level of 9. In our example on the screen, the person being sentenced has an offender score of 4, maybe because that person had 2 prior drug crimes, and at the time of the robbery also committed an assault. In the box at the intersection of the axes is a sentence range, and the sentencing judge only has discretion in choosing where in that range the sentence falls. Now, there are circumstances where there are enhancements or there are aggravating or mitigating factors that give the judge the authority to go outside of that range, but otherwise, the judge's discretion is limited to choosing between those numbers. This is important to point out because if we want to look at and really understand what goes into a sentence, we need to understand that there are many decisions along the way, charging decisions, bail decisions, arrest decisions that also impact that ultimate sentence. But we have started with sentencing because that is our first data. And we're focusing on what a judge chooses, where in the range the judge chooses to go. In this case, a judge must choose somewhere between 51 and 64 months in prison. Now, as I said, this grid was put in place to reduce systemic disparity, but I believe it is widely understood by people at all parts of the system that the grid did not fully achieve that goal. And so that is why we are excited to give you all the tool to begin to explore does the disparity still live in our system, and then to begin to ask, how can we solve that? With that, I'll hand this over to Kate.
I'd like to be you, but I'm not. All right, thank you so much, Kim. My name is Kate Stigafus. I am currently an employment lawyer at Microsoft. I'm a former criminal prosecutor, also a former pro tem judge over in Kitsap County on the other side of the water. I'm going to try and do 2 things at once, which is switch to the dashboard to give you a little tour of this and talk at the same time, which is likely nearly impossible for me. So let me get out of here. Oh, let's see. There we go. All right. All right, now I think everybody at home can see this as well. All right, within our American Equity Justice Group website, you can come to our dashboard, and I'm going to give you a quick tutorial. So the first tab you're going to see is our conviction proportionality tab. This has 2 packs of data in it. One group of data is our adult felony sentencing data. The other group of data is the Washington Census data for population purposes. Those are the 2 data piles we have in this chart. In an equitable world, if 10% of the population was Caucasian males, pretty close to 10% of the sentence population would be Caucasian males as well, a 1-to-1 ratio. Well, in combining this shows you in Washington state what those ratios are. So if you come down here, you can see for white individuals, it is fairly 1-to-1. Based on race, it changes. You can see there's some disparity here. You can sort this by race, you can sort it by year. What's showing right now is 2020. You can sort it by county, and you can sort it by gender. You can see what the trends are over time in certain counties. If I change the race here, it will pick the 5 counties with the highest population of that race. So you can see I switched it to Asian, and it changed the counties. There's also this dashed line is the 1, right? And so you can see where that dashed line might go depending on what race I check. For Asian, it's up there. For African American, it's way down here, right? These are just some visualizations that help you see what proportionality looks like. The next 3 tabs are all ways you can sort of run your own use cases. So all that is in the next 3 tabs is that sentencing data. We've pulled out the census data. That's no longer included. And so now we have sentence proportionality in various formats. This first tab is a way to sort by county and judge specifically. So you can put in an offense description, pick residential burglary. Maybe that's what you put in here. You can sort it by counties, judges, race, gender, timeframes. Like let's say I was elected on this date. I want to see what happened during my span as an elected prosecutor. I could put in those date ranges.
I could put in age ranges of the individuals as well. And what these percentages are is, so that grid that Kim showed you, if you're sentencing in the bottom of the range, that means it's 0%. If you're sentencing in the top of that range, in that box, that's 100%. So when you see a 37% here, what that means is that out of that little box that a judge was looking at, they were hitting that 37% mark with respect to this race for that specific sentence. It's what allows us to compare the most minor felonies to the most serious, is that percentage. These judges are currently sorted by the volume of cases, so they're in case order. You can sort them all different ways. And you can see there's some that are in red. Those are examples where the person had 20 or less. We're flagging those because that's obviously a very small sample size. And you can break it out. When you open up the judge, you can see what counties. So sometimes people sit in other counties for a time period. You can look at it that way as well. The next tab is the same information, just looked at a little different way, pulled out some different factors. So again, you can sort by all the same ways you could before, but here you can see this is broken out by race and age group right here. We've got that grid that Kim showed you. We've got it sorted by seriousness level and then offender score. So let's say there's a hypothesis that yes, as the seriousness level of the crime goes up, right? The Sentencing Guidelines Commission said, yes, we can factor that in. These are the sentences. But do people inherently see that seriousness level go up and they just tip a little bit higher, potentially, right, within that range? And we have flagged anything that's 50% or more in red here as well. I love the trends over time. I think this bottom chart is like my nerd self's dream, because I love to see, we're not saying why any of this happened, right? That is not what we are here to do. We are here presenting this neutrally. But you have to know where to start. That you have to know, do I look on December 1st of this year or that year? You have to have a place to start. And these kind of charts over time, I don't know what happened in 2003 here with Asian individuals, but at least I know there's something. It's a place to start versus wasting my time churning through data individually. That brings us to our final tab, which is the case drill down tab. And I'm going to run through a use example that Kim and I sort of played with one day when we were working on this. This is where you can get really specific. So let's say I've narrowed into a county, I've narrowed into a few judges. I can get down to the specific case numbers. Now, this doesn't take you to their court files. This doesn't link you anywhere where you get to see all sorts of personal information. But let's say I want to look at it. Well, I can go in here and say, yeah, my percentage here is really high because I remember that exact case, right? Like you can look into the nitty gritty data that makes up these numbers. So let's say I can expand this and I can sort by a whole host of things. Let's say I am Kim Gordon and I'm a lovely defense attorney here in Seattle. And someone comes into my office and says, hey, I was just charged with one count. I'm going to talk you through this as I do it, of residential burglary, right? I want to know what I'm looking at. Like, what am I looking at here? Let's say this is a person, mid-30s, Latinx male. One count of res work, offender scores 4. She could come in here, she could enter those details. She could say, all right, there's no enhancements, there's none of those mitigating factors, there's no exceptions. I'm just going to click all of that, right? Get rid of all of it and just see with a residential burglary. Let's type it in here. What are we looking at? So this will filter all of that. And what you'll see is over the data we have, 678 cases that align with that. And if I'm the Latinx person, it looks like 13.5 months is probably, the average of what I'm getting. Great information to know. But as Kim and I were playing with this, we said, well, look, this looks weird, right? This looks weird because why is the months are the highest for Latinx, but the percentage is the lowest? Like that doesn't jive. So we were able to go into the data and look at it. We scrolled over, there's lots of fields over here you can play with, and we went to this total sentence given. Like what months are we talking about here? We sorted. And we realized there's lots of people who have 0 months. They have under the standard range. The standard range for this crime would be 15 to 20 months. Lots of zeros in here. If I scroll, I'm just scrolling down, right? 2s, 8s, much less than the standard range. So we said, you know what, maybe there's all sorts of reasons people could get 0 months. Maybe they're getting drug offender sentencing alternatives. Maybe they're getting some sentencing alternative. And as a lay person or Kim, looking at this, she could say, I wonder if do Latinx individuals reject these more often? Do they get applied for as often? Are they put before judges? Like, what is it, right? Yeah, you're not answering that. But now at least we know that's something to look at. Maybe it's nothing, maybe it's something, but at least we have the data to start to look at it. So, and this will show you, if I come back in here and she says, okay, I just want the standard range, like I don't want to know all of these other exceptions, she can put in that standard range of 15 to 20 months, it filters again, and then all is right with the world. The months line up with the percentages, and you can see, more what the typical average would be. So, we understand some of the limitations of this, absolutely. What we would love is more data. This can only get better, right? We understand the limitations we have. I mean, our dream would be to have this have 39 tabs, one for each county, but we're telling the story of, that was the year we decided to stop charging roommates as domestic violence cases, right? Like that could be a thing. We would love to have that, but we really need the partnership and more data. So I'm going to turn it over to Kim again here, if I can stop sharing for our people at home. And I'm going to do it right.
One of the other things that you may have noticed in the demo that Kate was doing, and you'll certainly find this as you're doing your own work with the dashboard, you're not always going to see that there is a difference of years between people, the sentences that people of different races get. So does it really matter? Is it really that big a deal? And that's why we wanted to make sure that we put in this quote from Justice Sotomayor. Because when you're talking about a day in your life or your family member's life, or when you are as a taxpayer talking about funding someone's stay in prison, any amount of time is significant. And so we want to be making sure that whether the difference is big or small, that we're giving people the tools to figure out how to make it more equitable. Now, Senator Deaver talked about Blake. The decision that from February 25th, 2021, that ruled that our felony drug possession statute was unconstitutional. And in one decision, our state Supreme Court made an act that overturned the convictions of over 100,000 people in Washington. And I was thrown for a loop as a criminal defense lawyer. Judges, prosecutors, everyone was scrambling to figure out who was affected and where. So I circled on here, the decision again came on February 25th, 2021. And the other thing about that decision is that Justice Deborah Stevens, Chief Justice at the time, wrote, "The fact of racial and ethnic disproportionality in our criminal justice system is indisputable." So of course, we start with that assumption, but where? Is it affecting all counties the same? Is it affecting all courtrooms the same or all individuals? So where? Who is affected? Well, by using our tool, our team was able to, by March 17, 2021, identify every single case over the last 10 years that had a felony simple drug possession conviction. And we were able to separate that by county, and we were able to provide that to the practitioners who needed to know. It was then that the media started to take notice, because not only could we show who was being affected, what cases were being affected, but we could provide the actual data that gave meat or gave details to the justices' words. Most recently, in their article, the stranger indicated the impact of this kind of reliable data is hard to overstate. We're hoping you're going to help us prove that true, because it's going to be through your use of this data that's going to help make it hard to overstate, the value hard to overstate. We've had judges who have heard our presentation and have said, I have a sentencing this afternoon. When can I get this on my computer? It is now available. We have other legislators who have expressed to us their excitement about using our dashboard. We are pleased to announce that we are one of the winners of the Microsoft Hack for Society Challenge this year. To give you some context, every year in Microsoft Hackathon, they have a hackathon where individual employees can bring their ideas and join with their fellow employees to explore that for a few days to see if they can make their idea a reality. This year, there were over 69,000 participants in the hackathon. There were 248 projects in the Hack for Society Challenge. We won out of those 248. We are also pleased to join with other projects across the globe to be chosen as one of the 20 by 2022 open data collaborations with Microsoft. We've said at a number of times during our presentation, this is the beginning, and we mean it. This is the beginning, and we're excited for what the future brings. I want to talk about the future briefly, but before that, I want to tell you we have received a grant from Microsoft's Justice Reform Initiative, pro bono assistance from Davis Wright Tremaine and Perkins Cooley. We have been collaborating and look forward to continuing our collaboration with Microsoft's Chief Data Officer and his team. And the video that you saw today was produced by Mighty Media Studios. Now, the future. You have seen what is sentencing centric because that is the data that we started with. We have been approved to receive the Administrative Office of the Court's felony sentencing data that goes back over 50 years. And this is data from not just sentencing, but from a lot of the different points in the life of a criminal case. And you may think that our dashboard right now is judge-centric. Well, the Administrative Office of the Court data, it has defense lawyer names in it. I get to see what my data looks like, how my decisions stack up. I also get to look by prosecutor. So what we're doing is just the beginning. There's a lot of data out there, and this is a call to collaboration because we're more powerful together. So if there is data, if you are interested in volunteering, then please, I'm going to leave you with this. Contact us to collaborate. I want to thank Senator Dingra, Judge Keenan, Abron, and all of you for joining us today, whether you are in person or online. And I look forward to working with you all in the future. Thank you so much. Now, I know that we are at time. I do want to let you know that we are happy to answer your questions. And if there's questions online, Kate is watching that, and we'd be happy to address those questions as well. Afterwards, there is a reception outside for everyone that joined us here today in person. There is a reception. We encourage you to have snacks as you talk further. Anthony, do you want to come up here for any questions? Yes.
So I'm Jane Bowman from Whatcom County, and I am interested in learning what the timeline might be for implementing or using the data that you're expecting from the Office of the Court. And the reason I ask is because I'm trying to think, how can I use this in individual cases where I'm not doing policy work? And information by prosecutor or by my colleagues about how there are disparate impacts within their office seems very tangible, like, you know, I can absolutely see ways to use that in individual cases where it's a little bit harder to see how I can use it client by client. So I'm just curious what that looks like. And of course, I hope we'll brainstorm going forward how people see defenders using this data in individual cases, because that's what I want to talk about in my office.
I'll take that. Right now, the projected timeline was for us to receive the data in March, to run a little bit behind.
So you have the secret name tag.
My name is Tim Gordon. I've been an attorney for the last 5 years. Yeah, so they're running a little bit behind, and hopefully we're able to get it relatively soon. Because the next hackathon is fast approaching, and we've already gained so much notoriety over there. That'd be an easier way to get it done quickly. And just to give you some context, the first hackathon we did, this is one of the things that really impressed me with our team, right? In 2 days, they sorted over 500,000 cases.
That's what I was. Wow.
Yeah. We talk about we got a talented team. It's not an oversight. So as soon as we can get that from the AOC and hopefully, add it to the next hackathon, then we should be able to spit it out pretty quickly.
As a defense lawyer too, I want to encourage you to stay in contact. We are doing trainings. We are hoping to do trainings for prosecutors' offices, judges, community organizations. The first scheduled trainings is with King County Department of Public Defense. We just did one with Washington Defender Association. I believe that there are ways for practitioners now to use the data that we have. So very interested in sharing our ideas with you and your colleagues about how to use what we already have in the dashboard.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi.
I have a question about the data that you gathered. Did you have to go to like all the different superior courts to get their sentencing data? Or was there a central location that you could get that from?
That's a great question. So the data that we have in the dashboard, it has been compiled by the Caseload Forecast Council. And so that data was already available. It was already digitized, and they were through a data sharing agreement. We obtained that data from them. And so we're starting with, in some ways, the low hanging fruit. It's going to get harder. It's going to get harder to combine these data sources and to make sure that the data is accurate and that the tool is valid. We are confident that we are up for this challenge. When I first signed on to this project, I told Anthony, this is really exciting, but good luck, because this data is a mess.
Yeah.
And when I was talking to Microsoft, I was saying, have you seen the judgment and sentence forms? And have you seen the handwriting of lawyers in the filling in blanks? And they're like, yeah, and we're Microsoft and we deal with data. So bring it on. It's gonna be, we started with one source of data, but I'm confident that we're going to be able to combine others. Yes.
So with the data, especially for the races, how are the races synthesized? And how, was that determined which, what race categories would be used?
That is a great question as well. So when we received this data, there are limits to what we received. That limit starts with how is someone's race captured in the court data? And is that accurate or not? For instance, you'll see that there is an other category. And I think that people that fall into the other category are lots of times Latinx individuals, maybe API individuals. And so one of the things that you need to know is that sort of what we've received is not, it is what it is. What we are hoping is that through making tools like this available, we're also working towards capturing better data. Being able to break this up. API is a big category. There is lots of discussion about how we accurately represent Latinx individuals. There are people thinking hard about this, and we hope to play our role in inspiring them to make good on that and to share their ideas with us so that as we get better at keeping those records, the dashboard also gets better at reflecting. All right. Well, I look forward to talking with you all over a snack outside. And again, thank you so much for your time. Thank you everyone online, and we look forward to working with you in the future.